Here we are, Justin. Another end of the season show here on Alley Talk. 4 seasons in a row, 4 disappointing exits. Still exciting times in Philadelphia, but yesterday was a little bit of a killer. If you're a Philadelphia sports fans, the Flyers dropped their season opener. The Eagles lose on Thursday Night Football to the New York Football Giants of all teams. And of course, the main reason we are here to talk is the Phillies being eliminated by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Everybody out there, thank you so much. Welcome once again to Alley Talk. We are here to talk about the end of the Phillies season at the hand of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Game 4 NLDS, an exciting one, a pitching duel going extra innings. Ryan Kirkring knew how to pitch, unfortunately did not know where to go with the ball, throwing the ball away, a walk-off error. Todd Telecki reporting, as far as he could tell, the first walk-off error in postseason history. So a historic night for the Phillies, unfortunately on the wrong side of that history. My name is Kyle Fisher, as always, your host here on Alley Talk, joined by a first-timer under the Tuesday or the Friday 2 p.m. slot. Justin Crosby normally writes all about the Sixers, but has done some nice contributions, did a nice opinion, the curious case of Max Kepler a few months ago after his turnaround, and actually released something today, an opinion on why this is a little bit different for the Phillies. Justin, how you doing today? And give us a little rundown of that piece for those who haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, I'm struggling just like everybody else. It's one of those things where you look at if somebody's in the room with you, you look at them and be like, is this how it ends? Like it was that type of moment. And then it just went from like confusion to like smoke coming out of my ears to then like sadness. So it's like all these different emotions.
This is the range of emotions, man. Oof.
Yeah, so it was definitely, a range of emotions. And then, just more so, the piece I put out today was more so just about this moment and where they are. And they're really at you know, people say that all the time. They're at a true crossroads after yesterday. Um, Although we can always harbor over the series and how competitive it was and things of that nature, but they're at a point now where this outcome and the way they lost just puts a lot of people's futures, you know, up for grabs. Who knows what's going to happen? But definitely a crazy way to end and just so many emotions.
Yeah, man, it's pretty nuts. The way unfortunately it's a familiar feeling. All the I even tried to write something the other day, and I gave up because I couldn't get to the heart of what the piece truly was. But the last 3 years felt very familiar, and they talked after being eliminated last season at the hands of their division rival that changes were needed, and those changes for the most part were made during the regular season. You had Trey Turner was challenged to be a different hitter, to be the guy that put him, the type of guy that helped him rise to superstardom in the first place. Use the whole field, use your legs.
Yeah,
He was challenged to be a better defender at shortstop. He did all of those things.
yeah,
Kyle Schwarber every year has been challenged to be a leader and be a better all-around hitter. He had the best season of his career, and if he wasn't already the full-time voice of the leadership in that locker room, definitely became that this year. Probably was already, but definitely solidified his position as the leader of this team in what ends up being potentially his last year with the club. JT Realmuto looked like he might be on his way out offensively, at least from a talent
mhm,
perspective, and he showed halfway through the year. Brandon Marsh was hitting under 100 and ended up having the second highest average on the team by the end of the season.
right.
Max Kepler went through an emotional journey. Nick Castellanos went through an emotional journey. They went out and got the big time closer that they refused to get in the offseason the last couple of years. There was a few things that this team that they did differently throughout the season, but the regular season is one thing and the postseason is a completely different beast. And you can win as many games as you want every single season. We saw what the Phillies did in 2011, setting a new franchise record. They were assumed to be back in the World Series, and they lost in the first round too. This team faced, unfortunately, in their first round, the best roster we maybe have ever seen assembled in the major leagues. at their healthiest point. They were getting healthy all season long. The big question about their starting pitching was all season long was eventually answered because they got healthy. And then that answer became so strong that they ended up covering up their biggest deficiency, which was their bullpen. So not exactly what Phillies fans wanted to hear. I still don't accept that, well, you face the Dodgers, what are you going to do? Bad luck of the draw. I agree. I think that they're at a crossroads and something is going to have to change, whether that's new people, whether it's new voices. That's still to be determined. And one thing that reporters did out in Los Angeles was they asked all of the pending free agents and Rob Thompson himself about their futures. Now, I don't have the audio clip. I don't know what we're allowed to play and what we're not, Justin. So apologies for not having that ready to go. But everybody seemed to be willing enough to talk about it. You know, Rob Thompson said, I don't want to talk about that. I got 60 guys in there right now who are relying on me to pick them up. And we're talking more about that. I know that JT Realmuto did snap at one of the reporters a little bit and say, you know, that's not what I'm here to talk about, dude. Come on, not right now. Kyle, very emotional after the game. Ranger, I didn't see anybody talk to him, but he didn't pitch in the game, so it makes sense to kind of leave him be. But they have some big decisions to make, both from a roster perspective and who's going to be leading this team moving forward, whether it's on the field or off the field. What are your initial thoughts on trying to take the emotion out of it? What are your initial thoughts on the questions raised about Rob Thompson and his future leading this ball club?
Yeah, for Rob, he's not a complex guy, but it just seems like this situation is complex. Like, everybody loves him. They went from such a hard ass from Girardi to him.
Yeah,
They're just like, you can tell that it made a difference. They weren't as uptight, during the season. It allowed them to play better. Rob kind of really tried to build trust with his guys, giving them chances time over and over again. I mean, we could talk about the different times, but you even talk about the stuff with Romano, all year long, just really trying to give him a chance, give him a chance, give him a chance. And it's like, that's how you build those relationships and trust in his guys. But I think ultimately, you could definitely talk about some of his decisions, throughout his tenure here as a manager and this postseason, who he put in where, how he, put the lineup card out. But I mean, for the most part, the guys got to get on the field and perform. I think his pitching plan for game 3 was perfection. I think his pitching plan in last night's game was really well. And even the Kirkland move, he's been one of the worst guys on the team with inherited runners, scoring when he comes in the game. So that was definitely a situation where you're concerned, but he had Kirkering underneath all of that has the strikeout stuff. And you will hope in a situation that he would be able to use some of that to do the strikeout stuff. So I think in that, and he's come up with the right hander. So I think that's what you kind of wanted. It's just backfired so bad for him. I think that it's a tough decision to have to make. And I honestly think that Rob, I think that he probably won't be here. And I think it'll be more, I mean, they'll frame it whatever way they want to frame it, in my opinion. But I think this is a situation where Rob even may say, hey, maybe it's enough for me. And maybe Rob retires, right? He was going to retire after 2022 anyway as a bench coach for Girardi. So maybe it's time for him. Maybe he feels like, okay, it's time for me to retire. The guys may need a new voice. I feel like I've taken them, as far as I can. But I mean, once you make the decisions, some can be scrutinized, some can't. The players have to perform on the field. That's how I feel.
Completely agree. And so does one of our commenters, Roddy Zod. Rob doesn't deserve the blame whatsoever. Offense sunk the team. He does believe that Rob and the Phillies mutually part ways, but don't think the postseason exit is on Rob. I mean, you could make a case that there are decisions that could have gone differently, but at the end of the day, when your team can't hit, when the top 3 guys in your lineup are a combined in the 3 games you lost, I think they were 3 for 36 The top three guys, the two $300 million men, and the guy who's going to be the talk of the town in free agent circles.
Right.
I mean, when those three guys cannot get the job done, no matter what, it's. And look, the Dodgers didn't play a great game either. Like the Phillies pitching really held the
Yeah.
Dodgers in check. Shohei looked like a shell of himself, except for that game one on the mound. But it's like the bunt, for example, right? Everybody goes back to the bunt. The team couldn't hit. The bunt almost shouldn't matter, right? It
Right.
shouldn't come down to that. And I understand that you're in the situation and maybe a different roster construction going 11 pitchers instead of 12 if you're not going to use certain guys. And maybe they could have done something else to have an extra pinch runner, but like you still would have been in an awkward position with like Garrett Stubbs in left field and Max Kepler in center or some nonsense like that. So you really were banking on them winning that game on the bunt, even though he said he was playing for the tie. It would have been a ridiculous scenario if they did have somebody else to pinch run for him anyway. So I question that. You could potentially question why didn't Ranger go in game one, because he would have been a regular rest for game three. I did ask him that after game one, and he said there was no consideration to going there. And to be fair, maybe sometimes to a fault, Rob trusts his guys.
Yeah.
He trusts Kerkering all season long. He trusted Strom. Strom had an incredible season 2 seasons ago, the entire year. And the first half of this year really struggled, but picked it up in the second half. And that's a big thing of Rob sticking with him. You saw Rob sticking with Nick Castellanos a couple years ago, letting him play all 162 and really turning his season around halfway through. There's something to be said about loyalty in this game, and Rob brings that. It goes beyond the analytics. It goes beyond just having a feel for the game. He knows those guys. He gets to know those guys ins and out, and he made decisions based on that. He does have 1 year of his contract left. I think maybe if he is more than willing to come back, they likely let it ride 1 more year and see what happens. Because like you said, he's likely to retire on his own soon anyway. He was considering retirement after 22. I don't know if he would consider coming back for 1 more go of it, but either way, it's going to be, quite a few new faces in that clubhouse because they have some people leaving this club.
Mm-hmm. And then they try to blame, well, not they. I mean, the decision to walk Ohtani, I think, that's going to be a pain point for everybody, especially with Ohtani only getting 1 hit this entire series.
Yep.
But it's the smart baseball play, because even though you had the guy under control, you don't put him in a situation where he beat you. And in that case, Duran winds up walking on the run. But if he pitches to Shohei and Shohei hits a 3-run homer, then it's 3-1, and it's a totally different story. So it's
everybody's asking, why would you pitch to that guy? Why not go right on right?
So it's like you damned if you do, you damned if you don't. And then, as some of the people in the comments were talking about, like, the offense stunk. And if you walk in a run, your closer walks in a run with bases loaded, and it's 1-1, like, you guys should have more runs. And again, I get it. The Dodgers pitchers were, tossing and shoving too. Like, I get it. But it just seems like they had better at-bats in clutch situations to where it allowed them to put pressure on whoever was on the mound for the Phillies and allow them to eke across a run or hit a home run to get a crooked number and change the scoreboard, whatever that was. And the Phillies just didn't have that in them, except for in game 3, and then 1 inning in game 1, and then the bottom of the 9th. And, after that Castellanos at bat, which he had a knack for doing that, driving in those runs, reaching out the zone to get that. But, if Castellanos gets thrown out at second, it's a totally different thought process. So it's like, I think the decisions of a manager are definitely tough, but I mean, the guys have to do it on the field. It's not like, in my opinion, like, I compare it to like watching the Sixers. Like, the players have to play, they have to hit shots, but scheming and matchups matter. And when you have a situation where, I don't know, I want to say you have a guy like Bonda coming in, throwing throwing outside of the zone. Like, you gotta know, like, all right, it's lefty on lefty, but you have to know, like, his matchups and his percentages and not to swing at stuff to put yourselves in better positions. Like, those guys have to make the decision in that moment that I'm gonna eliminate a part of the plate. So anything that's low and outside, like, I'm not gonna go and they dot me, whatever. But I have to make better swing decisions. And they did that for majority of the year. But here, after game 3, when they were like really aggressive, they went back entirely to the game plan. Okay, we're going to be patient, but then, okay, now we're being too patient, so now we have to swing at bad stuff. It's like they were caught in between. So I don't think that's on Rob.
Yeah, man. A big comment here from Evan. The Phillies hitting has let the team down. Average 9.7, so almost 10 strikeouts per game in the last 10 postseason games. Only game under 5 strikeouts was that game 3 offensive explosion. Yeah, and this other comment from I Am Legend, the Topper might be gone just because that's the price of leadership. And he's right. It might be one of those things where, same with Girardi, honestly. Girardi was let go at 22 and 29 with a strong roster. It just, they felt like a new voice was needed. And luckily Rob ended up being that guy to carry them the rest of the way. But I mean, it's sometimes, unfortunately, when you're in a position of power, you're the one who has to fall on the sword, whether it's your fault or not. You can't replace all 26 guys, but you can replace the one guy at the front of the pack. It'll be interesting to see what they do. The initial feeling. I mean, honestly, Justin, as soon as he picked up that ball and I saw him not turn to first base, I just went. Like, obviously, I saw where the throw went, but I was like, oh no! Like, I didn't even get emotional, like aggressive emotionally. Normally, it's a little different now that you cover the team, but in that 2011 run, I was screaming. I was so upset that they lost, right? I just went, man, here we go again. Like, I just started thinking about what we're going to talk about today. Like, oh, well, I guess we got to talk about who's going to be a free agent, and does Rob have a job next year? And does he want the job next year? Is he tired of all the drama? Getting a little bit older. All of a sudden, 2 guys speak up a little bit, and Nick Castellanos was confused on everybody else says that they had a great experience with him. He's like, I don't really talk to the guy like that. Is it just Rob's time to walk away? And regardless of that decision, will it make a difference? That's the big question that I have. Like, there's no end all be all of I want Rob out, so automatically whoever takes over now with this same roster, we're going to win. Like, the roster is the roster. The deficiencies are the deficiencies. You need to change something, whether it's the culture, whether it's the approach, whether it's whatever it is. Something has to change. And the one thing that I brought up a couple times, Justin, and I want to get your take on this, but I brought this up a couple times this season. The excuse from Rob Thompson's great at covering for his guys. He's a great players manager. So I take everything that players managers say with a grain of salt. Right. They're doing what they're doing to defend their guys. But the one excuse that he's always had, whether it be playoffs, regular season, whatever, is these guys are just trying to do too much. Trey Turner wasn't trying to do too much when he was the American. He was Captain America during the World Baseball Classic. He wasn't trying to do too much then.
America shortstop.
Yeah. Bryce Harper, he's a guy who's never known to do too much. JT is a guy who's always been complimented for a simple swing. Kyle Schwarber has done nothing but get better. Trey Turner all season long figured out how to not do too much and just put pressure on the defense and pressure on the pitching staff. And all these guys are highly paid. At what point does a bunch of dudes age 30 and up who have been around the block, who have won multiple awards, at what point is that not a valid excuse? At what point can a bunch of 30-year-old men who are really good at this sport, at what point can you no longer accept they're trying to do too much? Like, they should know by now what it means to try and do too much and not do that, right? I know that not everybody can win the title, but if they played 4 hard-ass games and lost 3-1, we'd be having a different conversation about this. When the excuse at the end of it is they tried to do too much and only one game were they successful, like, I'm sorry, that's crap, and I don't want to hear that from take the amount that they make out of it. I hate that. Like,
Yeah.
sports contracts are what they are. I don't care. Like, that's just, if I was a professional athlete, I'd be making that much too, but I'm not, right? I'm here talking about it. So the at what point does it become like that can't be a valid excuse? I don't know what else I expect the manager to say, right?
Yeah.
But like, at what point does that not become a valid excuse anymore?
I, you're right. It's not valid. But like you said, Rob is that type of manager that's going to be that player's manager and just kind of like, lack of a better term, go down with the sinking ship. It's not
Yeah.
gonna throw anybody off, off the boat. And like case in point with just the whole saga with Nick this season, like, all right, like when Nick was first benched, um, after I guess I'm sure nobody really knows the real conversation, but I'm sure he cussed out Topper
Yeah.
after he was taken out and he didn't play the next game. Everybody was like so confused because Nick never misses a game, and we found out what it's for. And it just seems like from there the relationship was strained. And although Castellanos says some very pointed things about Rob in the media, Rob always took the blame, regardless of what you want to say about Castellanos. He always said, okay, well, maybe I could do better in communication with specifically him. Like, my door is always open, but maybe I can reach out more. So, like, he's never gonna, besides saying the obvious of that, like, these guys aren't making good swing decisions. Like, he's not the type of person that's going to say that in the media. Now, he may pull you aside and say that, or I don't know what Kevin Long's hand is in that. And we can talk about that. He's probably done at this point. But yeah, I just think it's not a valid excuse, but Rob is not going to say out loud what needs to be said for everybody to hear, because he's just not that type of guy. We all know the swing decisions, for the most part, were bad. We all know that for some reason, now that the expectations are really heavy on them, that they struggle in the playoffs because they all want to hit the big homer. They don't want to pass the baton. Everybody wants to swing. Like, even if you're looking at the extra innings or the final, all the swing decisions were bad. Marsh, the series, terrible. It's just like they were not taking advantage of the opportunities that were provided to them. And Rob can't go out and say, well, Schwarber's 1 for 30 or whatever it is, right? Whatever he was, because Schwarber had a last bad 3 weeks before the postseason.
Yeah,
He
he
was just in
struggled
a
right
rut
going
in
in.
general.
Yeah.
And he's not going to go out and say, like, Schwarber's, you can tell that he's in the middle, like, he's thinking too much. He's guessing. So this is what he needs to do. He's going to say, they're trying a little too hard, and we're going to talk to him about it, but that's the best, that's the best we can do. But it's not a valid excuse, because at the end of the day, their actions is putting his job on the line. So, I mean, he's going to go down with more respect for not necessarily calling out specifically what everybody's done wrong, because at anybody in the manager's point, you can point to them on what some of the decisions that they make. But yeah, I think he's just going to be like that. And whether he's gone or not, we're going to continue to hear the same phrases over and over again.
Yeah.
And the way it changes is you got to get guys in who make better swing decisions, period. I don't know who that is. We can talk about that later, but there needs to be at least three guys in this lineup who make better swing decisions. I don't care if they have pop or not. They
Agreed.
gotta they have to be able to put the ball in play.
It's funny because one of the guys that is the best at that on this team, for whatever reason, doesn't get a ton of respect. And I would love to, I haven't done a deep dive into his season overall, but Alec Boehm is a guy who he's basically he's a pure contact hitter. He's like Luis Arias if Luis Arias was 6'5" and had floppy hair. Like, that's what I know, that he's not that level of contact, but like, he's a guy who sprays it all over the field. He hits better with runners in scoring position in his career than he does with nobody on. I think he's a good fit for the middle of that lineup. But if he's the only guy hitting that way, and everybody else isn't doing it, then when he comes up with nobody on, he's like, okay, now I have to get out of my norm. Whereas if everybody were passing the baton, maybe it would be a little bit different. And early in the season, it almost seemed like they did too much of that. I remember complaining on here early on, like they all have figured out how to cut down on their chase and they've all increased their walk rate, but now nobody is willing to deliver the dagger. Like nobody is going for the situational hit. He nobody is the guy who's just coming up like, oh, okay, it's my turn. Let me go knock in these 2 runs. And then they all got swing happy and it revert. They're like trying to find this middle ground. Whereas it's something I've been curious about before because I don't know. Obviously, I don't cover other teams, but it does feel like everybody gets hot or everybody gets cold at one time. Whereas, like, if half your lineup is hot and half your lineup is cold, you can be carried. There was a little bit of a period there, right, where like the 6, 7, 8, 9 guys were carrying the lineup
Sure.
as Harper and Schwarber went through like a midseason lull. Yeah, just was Trey 100%? Probably. I don't. There's some things I don't like about his swing. I mean, I went back and looked at the World Baseball Classic, and everything's a little bit simpler. He's moving a lot, a big step now. And those were probably adjustments. He probably went through some struggles at one point.
Yeah.
Someone said, we'll do this to make up for that. But I went back and everything's so compact, so still. And I feel like he's moving a lot. Bryce didn't look like the same guy at points this season. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up getting like surgery on his wrist in the offseason. He's not a guy who's going to make excuses, so he stopped bringing it up. He didn't see any time off after he was activated again, so that's probably why.
Right.
Bader getting hurt in game 1, that's a huge difference for this team.
Yes.
Makes not only your defense better, but he was the hottest hitter on the team at the time. That would have been huge. The pitching did their job,
Yeah.
in my opinion. They did everything that was asked of them. I'm a little surprised that Walker Buehler didn't get into a game. I think Taijuan Walker only made it in because it was a big lead, right? I think that it may have been Buehler there if the game was a little bit closer. But Buehler's one of the best postseason pitchers of his generation. I know that he's had down seasons the last 2 seasons, but it was a little surprising to see him not get any action whatsoever. But something's got to change, right? And we know that changes are coming because we know that there's a few guys set for free agency. Let's run through them. Some guys are obvious that they're not going to be back. Some guys are a little less so. So I'm just going to go to the top 10 free agents. They have Jordan Romano, who I think we can safely assume will not be donning Phillies pinstripes next season. Tim Miza, same idea. Was claimed off waivers as an extra lefty with Alvarado. They're likely to pick up Alvarado's option because it's a club option and it's less than $10 million. He'll likely get that somewhere just because of how good he is, regardless of the suspension. David Robertson, I don't think anybody expected him to come back. It was a late season addition. Max Kepler, I wouldn't be surprised if they went in a different direction there. He was fine in the second half, but overall underwhelming for what you hoped to get from him. Right. I don't know if anybody at least fan-wise, I don't know if anybody expected him to be great. Great guy. Got to talk to him a lot. Really good dude, but likely won't be back on this club unless it's in a platoon or backup role. Walker Buehler, I could see them bringing him back on another 1-year prove-it deal, especially if they don't re-sign Ranger Suarez. We saw the importance this season of having a lot of starting pitching. I know a lot of people will argue, if Zach Wheeler comes back, you have Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, Luzardo, and then Painter as the 5th guy. But Painter wasn't ready this year, and they thought he might be. There's no guarantee that he'll be ready to start next season. You want some veterans at least to buy you some time. And if Walker Buehler has to be that guy, I'm okay with it. I'm not saying he's the guy that they may end up going with a cheaper option as someone to buy them some time. But Walker Buehler's a potential. Harrison Bader has a mutual option for this year. I anticipate him opting out of that. That doesn't mean that he won't come back, but I expect him to be a free agent. And then obviously the big 3, JT Realmuto behind the plate, Ranger Suarez on the mound, and the DH best season of his career, Kyle Schwarber. Those are the 3 that everybody's been talking about. Justin, initial thoughts on that list and who should – we can run through them a little bit quicker if you want to do like a who's back, who's not. But what are your initial thoughts on who should be back and who do you want to see back in Phillies red next season?
I do. So about the Walker Buehler thing, my thought during those extra innings, I thought if Luzardo got through that inning, or if Kirkring got out of it, right? Whatever the case may be. I thought they may, depending on the matchup, they might have tried to bring Tanner Banks in. But I say all that to say that I felt like Walker Buehler was going to start game 5, or at least
once
have
they went to
innings.
Luzardo, yeah.
I mean, yes, yeah. Because I think if Luzardo, he had 30 pitches. Who's to say he comes back to start game 5 or not? Who knows, right? It's the playoffs. Guys do whatever because it probably was bullpen day anyway. So
Yeah,
he
right.
may have started right. But I just thought he would have got some innings in game 5. But I think I like your thought about Walker Buehler. Also, think it also depends on if they can somehow get off of Taijuan Walker's contract, but we'll see. JT, I do think he's going to be back. He should be back, although he's declining offensively. He still is a good catcher. He, plays a lot of days. They need a guy like that to help with this pitching staff. Stephanie with the younger guys. So I think JT will be back. I think it'll be a shorter deal, and I think they'll match it up with Wheeler's deal. 2 more years left, maybe 2 years for JT. Maybe give him a third just to sign, but kind of line it up. I think Rangers gone. They're going to give him a qualifying offer, but I think they're going to be teams that just his durability has been in question. But there's like pockets of the season when he looks like the Cy Young, and then in the playoffs he's looked good in mostly every playoff appearance he's had. So I think some teams are going to want that. So I don't think if somebody offers Ranger 150 million, something like that, like he's going to take it as he should.
Starting pitchers get paid, man. Like even if you only think you're going to get 25 starts out of him, I think that he's going to be a guy that gets paid big bucks. Him and Framber Valdez are like the cream of the crop when it comes to guys. And not only is Ranger, like you said, he's been good in the postseason. He can pitch in any role in the postseason. You've seen him start. You've seen him come out of the bullpen. And he is I don't think a lot of people realize this. He's the active postseason ERA leader in Major League Baseball. He has the best postseason ERA of any pitcher in baseball right now. He is the 4th best ever, and that's including like Mariano Rivera, who leads the way. He's right behind him in postseason ERA. So he's a guy who he's been there and done it. He's proven that he can do it on the biggest stage. And then obviously the big one is Kyle Schwarber. What are your thoughts on bringing him back?
I really don't know. Like again, it could be emotional because of the loss, but he just like you could see him really being emotional. And to me, watching it through my phone, felt like he knew that was his last. Like he didn't want to go out like that, and that's how I feel. I just don't know if he'll be back. In my opinion, if they wanted Schwarber back, they would have got it done. They are really good at getting things done the year prior. They are really good at those things. They make an effort to get those things done before opening day to make sure the guys that they want, they locked up. Not to say they don't want them, but maybe he really wants to see his market. Want him having the best season of his life, that complicates things. Now you have to think about who has the money to give it to him. I know Cincinnati Reds rolled out the red carpet for him and his family, but they're not going to give him.
I've never seen anything like that, by the way.
Yeah.
I've never seen a guy throw a first pitch to his high school coach when he's the visitor. What in the world was that?
So that's what I'm saying. So they were tampering, but they don't have the money or they don't want to spend. But like some of those teams who are willing to spend, like I could literally see like, and this is just off the top of my head, I can see like the Texas Rangers or something like just throwing a bag at him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just to say, okay, indoor park, come be our DH, whatever. Like I can see that. So it's like one of those teams might offer him more than the Phillies want to give a DH who only plays 10 days in the field. Bryce is looking like the point where he needs to have some DH days.
That's a big part of it too, right?
So, and then, it's just a lot to think about. Do they let Schwarber go after somebody else who they want to be a full-time DH that has power, like Pete Alonso? Just thinking. So I'm like, there are options out there to maybe make up for Schwarber's production, not 54 home runs or 56 home runs, whatever, but Tucker's out there, Alonso's out there. They might be able to make a trade for somebody. So I don't think they're necessarily tied to him. So I really don't know. And if if there was a bet on any betting site and it was, is Kyle Schwarber going to be back, yes or no, my money would be on no.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, a lot of big decisions for them to make. A big emotional night for Philly sports, as we mentioned. We're going to do a quick reset. You are here listening to Alley Talk here on Philly Sports Network. My guy, Justin Crosby, first time on the show, but no less credibility. First of all, you see the hat. You know the guy's passionate. Second off, he has written great opinion pieces for us for the Phillies, and he is one of our crack Sixers writers over at Philly Sports Network. Make sure you give him a follow. We know that we got big things going on at Philly Sports Network with Eagles, Flyers, and Sixers about to kick off. Well, Flyers just kicking off, Sixers about to kick off. And we're here basically giving the requiem. We're going to do a full retrospective and look at the offseason in the coming weeks. We're going to take a week off next week. But Alley Talk every Friday, all season long. Appreciate all the love. One thing that isn't going to be a tough decision for us, Justin, is bringing in our next guest, who not only is from Philly, but he is a sports researcher extraordinaire, crack researcher for over a decade now. He also works in sports television. Oh, yeah, and he's related to me. John Fisher, what is going on, my man? John, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming back on with us. I know that we talked after the trade deadline, all the excitement, and unfortunately, the next time we have you on, not as exciting here for these Phillies fans. First off, what was your initial thoughts watching the end of that game and the emotional response that comes with it?
I ran in the other room and just kind of stood there for a sec. I just kind of like the standing equivalent of pushing your chair back. I just kind of, my whole body went back and ran in the other room. Like I was saying to you guys, like, you know, part of it's just getting older and having different things. Part of it is, you know, having to do some of this stuff for work. But, you know, I try not to let games like really affect my mood. I'm into it. I'm a fan. I try to be so much more like I want them to win rather than when it doesn't happen, you know, that it can bring me down. But yeah, that was I was pretty bummed for a bit. And it just, a lot of it was just for any team, for anything, you know, any sport, you'd hate to see a game end that way.
Yeah.
Like there was a part, you know, I wasn't rooting for a walk-off grand slam or something, but there was a part of me like, if somebody smashed one of the seats, that would have been better than watching that. So yeah, man, just a bummer. And I, like, you guys have talked plenty about the bigger picture of this team that has, this wasn't earlier, but the World Series appearance, NLCS, and now 2 straight Division Series appearances. While the wins go up, yeah, it's a bummer, and you hate to do that in the moment, but you do start thinking like, what's next? What do they need to do? Of course, there's all the what should they have done, what shouldn't they have done, all the micro decisions and things. But yeah, that big picture that you guys have talked about so well is, all right, what do we do now?
And yeah, John, the one thing that I've kind of been struggling with is, you know, everybody wants to point blame somewhere. And could there have been better decisions here? Sure. Could there have been a better moments? You know, do you walk Ohtani? Do you go for the bunt? Do you do that? There could have been better managerial decisions, but ultimately the pitching seemingly did their job for the most part. The offense, not so much. I believe I have the numbers correct. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't have them up in front of me. 3 for 36 in the 3 games that they lost for Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and Bryce Harper combined. That's not going to get it done regardless. So to me, you can say all you want about the error at the end of the game, or should they have bunted, or should they have pitched to Ohtani. Ultimately, the hitters who lead this team did not get the job done. I mean, a guy who everybody wants to rip, and Nick Castellanos had 2 of the biggest hits of the series. It was like 2 of 3 hits, but 2 of the biggest hits of the series came off a guy that everybody who's a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies wants to run out of town.
Yep. I mean, the way I look at it is, I look at it this way. Like, 2 things can be true. It can be that they faced a really good team. I mean, just the Phillies were seeded higher. The Dodgers, for whatever reason, didn't win as many games during the year, but they, like, the Dodgers are a threat. And I know it seemed fun early when, like, oh man, we could get the winner of Dodgers and Mets, and both teams are struggling, and that would be great. I'd rather face them than the Cubs and the Padres. But when the Dodgers roll out, they win in 2, and Shohei Ohtani, who just threw 5 scoreless innings against you, is the starter in game 1. Like, that's not enjoyable. And the thing I was going to say about 2 things could be true. Like, they needed to do more, but you can also understand how this happens. And I think if you guys pointed out about Ohtani too, it just wasn't getting as much pub because they go on the road and take a 2-0 series lead. You're coming home. You're not focusing on Ohtani being one for whatever he was at that point. It would have been the same way if we go, if somebody at the bottom of the lineup or Castellanos did it again or a ball reaches the seats or whatever, like if that's a Turner's throw, if they go out to LA up 2-0 and the top of the lineup is the same, then everybody's talking about what's Ohtani doing and all that stuff. So I just think it's funny, like seeing what Sasaki did last night was just incredible. And I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm looking here like
no, you're fine.
The Phillies outscored the Dodgers in the series. And I'm not saying that means they would have won. Like we all know how this stuff works, right? But the Dodgers scored, I think, 14 runs in the series. Like you guys have said a number, so the Phillies pitchers did their job. So you could say Phillies pitchers did their job. The Phillies hitters had a really tough task, but they needed to do more, and individuals and all together needed to do more. It is a tough task, but for a team that's built like this, and Kyle and I have talked about it previously, like when you look at the offseason and there aren't major changes made, part of that is there aren't major changes to make. They set this team up a couple years ago to last for a couple years in almost the exact form, right? So you kind of have a little bit of like live and die with this team. Now there's things to be done, and last year people lamented what they didn't do with the trade deadline, and they went out and did the exact opposite this year. And it's a bummer that Bader got nicked up and wasn't there. But honestly, outside of Clayton Kershaw in this series, the Dodgers rolled out some nasty pitchers that did what the Phillies nasty pitchers were doing to their hitters. So if you're able to step away, it was kind of a fun series with some really close games, that crazy ending, and then of course the explosion in Game 3 from the Phillies and Schwarber. But like, it's tough to say. Like, I wouldn't want to say it to defend it and say nothing wrong. It was a really tough task, but the bottom line is the Phillies hitters weren't up to it, and now it's what do you do? And I think what you guys have talked about, how do these people do it, or how do you find other people to do those things?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Our guy Hembo put out, and I know that this was heavily weighed by that one game, but the Phillies scored more runs, they had more hits, they hit more homers, they struck out less, they drew more walks, they stole more bases, and they lost the series 3-1. Now, granted, again, that's one offensive explosion off a guy who probably was left in there to eat it a little bit in Clayton Kershaw. Baseball's weird, man. Baseball is a beautiful, brutal sport. One thing that I thought was interesting, and again, I love Rob Thompson. I think he's been a great leader of this team. But Jeff Passan was on the Baseball Tonight podcast, and he said, we've been analyzing baseball for a century and a half now, and there's no commonality among managers who have the ability to win in the playoffs. So, you have a guy like Bruce Bochy who's sitting on the sidelines right now, who is a, four-time World Series winner? John, is it 3 or 4 for Bochy?
Bochy 4 now with the Rangers, yeah.
So he has 4 World Series, and he is out of a job currently. And we're debating whether Rob Thompson, who, again, has taken this team and increased the win total every year, increased their regular season standing every year, and just like it was said on the Baseball Tonight podcast, there's no commonality. But it's not like you have to be of a certain cut from a certain cloth or born in a certain area to be a World Series manager. It's just some guys, players and coaches alike, are built for it and some aren't. So, Justin, I don't know if you have thoughts on, is it drastic changes? Is it, hey, do we need, we just talked about all the guys who are free agents and whether we want them back, whether we think they'll be back. Is it time for sweeping changes, or is it time, maybe 1 or 2 pieces makes a difference, or is it kind of a bigger thing than that?
Yeah, I think it's time for sweeping changes. By sweeping changes, these are the things I think about. Or could be changed. Manager, hitting coaches, other bench coaches. I think out of anybody on the coaching staff, Caleb Cotham's job is, I feel like, the safest. I feel like he turns everybody into, for most people, most pitchers,
and
really,
should be.
turns them into superstars. So I think everybody outside of Turner, Harper, um, obviously Duran, Strom, Kirkland just because he's young, although he made the mistake at the end. But I feel like outside of those guys, I think everybody's spot could be up for grabs. Now, are they going to try to trade everybody? No, that's impossible. But I do think that they'll look for specific deals to try to upgrade things. I personally don't think Cassie's going to be here. I think that thing has run its course. He's had some great moments. He's had some great moments in this postseason, but I think just his thing with Rob, his thing with the team, his thing with the fans, I just think it's run its course. So I do think that'll be something. I think Brandon Marsh, they've been wanting him to be an everyday player for so long, but he hasn't proven that he can at this point. And you have to give other guys the opportunity. Marsh and Castellanos, they're both blocking Justin Crawford. He needs to be somebody who gets a chance next year to play every single day and provide speed, contact, defense. Like he just has to be that type of guy. So, I think outside of, some of those people I named, I think everybody has a chance to be moved or a decision need to be made. Start as a Gold Glover, but he has somebody that he's somebody who could be moved. I do think that they want Bader back, but we'll see. But I do think there'll be some sweeper changes. They have to. Like you can't keep rolling the ball out with the same lineup. You just can't. When you have those results, you just that's insanity. You can't do it.
I think what you're saying, Justin, too, it should be less or maybe just as much about wanting to move on from specific people versus identifying people that do what you're saying, right? That's the front office should be doing that all the time. And I assume they are. That what kind of people do we want? And not having the thing that outside of Harper or if Schwarber comes back and his spot being, filled and some pitchers and things, but outside of a select few people, never thinking that we can't get that guy because this guy is already here. Right. If you identify a person that fills needs and improves your team, then don't let someone who's sitting here stand in the way. And I think in the past they probably have. And, it's fans do that, and maybe not because they want to, but because you try to think along with the team. When Castellanos has 3 years left and $60 million, it's unlikely they're going to make that move, right?
Right.
If there's something obvious and Middleton is signing off on it, great. But I agree with you. I think I'd be ready to move from Castellanos, and he looks, I don't want to pretend like I could figure this stuff out from here, but he looks and sounds like a guy that wouldn't mind being in another place. So if there's a mutual thing, but it's also, I think I would assume in the past, if there were upgrades or there were additions to be made, they kind of looked at that spot not there. But I'd like to think that they wouldn't let that stop them now.
Yeah, there's two things to be said about a guy like him and Taijuan Walker. Understood the moves at the time. I celebrated both moves at the time.
Right.
They just didn't work out. Sometimes that happens. But I think that if they manage to, and I know that these guys are not the same caliber guys as the guys I'm going to reference, but if you remember after that big implosion rather from the Mets a few years ago, they spent all that money on starting pitching. They went out and got Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, signed them to mega contracts, and it didn't work, and they hit the reset switch. And one way they were willing to do that, the owner had to agree to it, so this would be on John Middleton as much as anybody else, but they targeted specific prospects and said, we are willing to give you all the money for this guy to get that guy in return. They targeted Luis Angel Acuna and said, we want him. And they're like, well, we're not going to give you him for $45 million. That's okay. Here's $45 million too. Give us that guy, right? So I think that you can get creative, especially in one-year deals. I think that the old saying, like everybody quotes this, but I've heard it said multiple times that there's no such thing as a bad one-year deal. Well, both of these guys are in theory on one-year deals because they're in the last year of their contract. If you're willing to pay that down to get a better prospect and then free up that space that you're talking about, it's one thing for that money to count against the tax, but it's money counting against the tax versus actual cash on hand, right? There's ways to figure that out. Even if the money's counting towards the tax, there's a way to figure it out with the team. Like, hey, we're covering that and we'll absorb it into our tax hit. But here's, we'll figure out a way to give you the 20 over time, and you free yourself up for some of those more those opportunities that we just spoke of. So whether it's Justin Crawford or identifying somebody who, the Marlins have a litany of young talent, the Rays have a litany of young talent. If one of them feels like they need some help somewhere, that there's ways to get creative without accepting like, oh, we're just going to run it back again. Even if they do bring back some of these guys like Kyle and JT. And, one of the things about bringing back JT is, and yes, trades, you can get a little more creative, but outside of Real Muto, there's not a whole lot of guys who would come in and be an everyday catcher right away. I mean, there's not a lot of people who are playing catcher every day to begin with,
Right.
But, Real Muto at 35 years old is still the best option on the free agent market. Otherwise, you're talking about bringing in Victor Caratini or James McCann or Gary Sanchez or like Mitch Garver if he opts out, or like that. That's a whole lot of guys who, like, I don't even know if one of them partnered with Garrett Stubbs or Rafael Marchand would be the way to go. And do you want to go into next season with those two being your catchers? Yeah, it's not quote unquote not ideal if you aren't keen on JT coming back, but the work he's done with the pitching staff means a lot. And the fact that you're probably only going to have to sign him to a 2 to 3 year deal would mean a lot to me too. So like John mentioned earlier, we're talking about you can make change for the sake of making change, but what other option is there? If you don't have an identified other option, then it doesn't hurt to run it back. You were still a 96 win team this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. If there aren't many options out there, yes, I agree. But like I said, you see franchises, and you can obviously talk about the Dodgers. They do whatever they want to do. But you see the other franchises and other sports, like you have to find a way to be creative and make something different so you're not ending up in the same position that you were previously. Everybody makes changes, and I don't want to say they need to be around the margins because I don't think they need to bargain bin hunt anymore. Like, that needs to be out of their mind. If they're going to do stuff, they need to make proper signings, like, impact signings is a better word, I would say. But like, you have to have better guys around the core that's going to be left, that's going to complement them in a specific way. If you have guys who are just boppers, well, everybody can't be a free swinging bopper. Like, we've seen that not work. So you have to figure out a way for those things to change. And you have to be creative, whether it's the minor leagues, whether it's, trying to get a big trade, whether it's going at one of the big free agents or a couple of the big free agents. Like, I know Los Angeles, and they're like in a league of their own as far as their spending because of where they are and who the owners are and all of that stuff. Middleton has showed that he is willing to spend, and they are not New York as well. They're not Steve Cohen or the Yankees, but I do feel like fans are coming out. They're getting the money from concessions, merchandising, all of that stuff. I do feel like they have chances to spend more than they already are and it's crazy that the Bryce Harper deal looks like a bargain at this point, but like, they have to spend. I just think that they have to be creative, whichever way they can, to make things look different. And everybody's not going to like it. Like, in the clubhouse, I mean, like, they're not going to like some of the changes. But if you want to be a champion, you got to do some hard things.
You also have to, I think, and maybe I'm trying to remind myself of this, but like, you guys are mentioning Real Muto, the gap between Real Muto and who might be available. You still have to look at it in total too, because if you look at every single one, every single position or every single roster spot, and don't want to have too big of a gap from the former player to the replacement, you still have to look at how it fits the whole team in total. So like, there is a possibility that if they can't figure it out with Real Muto and whoever the replacement is, you look at who went out, who came in, and where that nets out. You know what I mean? So
True.
if you're looking at every move, like it's fun, and I would do the same thing. You want the best at every position, the best available. And the other thing I try to remember is it's easy to look at free agency, but if they can be creative about stuff, and I would imagine like perfect example was last year. Nobody would have predicted trading for someone like Jesus Luzardo, and he was fantastic and a really good move in an offseason when people said all year still how the Phillies didn't really do anything in the offseason, and that conversation leads towards big free agent signings, which of course the Phillies had done for several years in a row, and re-signing their own guys and all these big contracts. But trading for a guy like Jesus Luzardo is a really good move, especially when you give up nothing. So, if there's moves out there to be made like that, Dombrowski usually is like that. Everyone says that top of the market swinger. But if there's stuff like that to do, same like I said before, the front office should be, and I'm sure is, looking at those kinds of things.
And John, I wanted to get your take on this because it's something I've brought up in the past, and I know we only have you for a few more minutes. So, and maybe I'm not even phrasing the question right. Maybe it's just a statement more than it is a question. But an excuse or explanation or a response from Rob Thompson all season with this star-studded lineup has been, and in years past, has been that guys are just trying to do too much, and we got to get them to not try to do too much. And when you have guys this experienced and this much of a veteran lineup, and you can even include guys like Bohm and Stott and Marsh in that, but when you're looking at JT and Bryce and Trey and Kyle and Nick, at what point does that no longer become a valid excuse? Like you have guys who have been in this league for damn near 10 years for all the guys all the guys I just named, if not longer than 10 years. And it's the manager having their back at the end of the day, but how can that be the excuse when you have guys who have been through the ups and downs, been through the ebbs and flows, and know what it takes to do too much or not do too much?
I think you guys nailed it earlier. I'm not going to add anything to it. You're right that you take that for what it's worth from the manager. I think smart fans know why he's doing that and what he's saying, whether he actually thinks that's the excuse or not. But then to tie it into other stuff you guys said at the same time, like you just have to find people that'll do it. Like it could be true. And that's another thing that some of these comments about the fans, like I think a lot of them are true. We talk about the boorish behavior of fans and how fans like to try to lean into this stuff. And we saw it at a completely separate situation, but I think the Ryder Cup was the same way. All the talk about how New York's going to be tough and the home crowd is going to elevate and New York is even tougher than everywhere else. And these people come out and they feel emboldened to act like that. And I think there's some truth to it. And I wonder, like, it's a hard thing to say. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants that to be the excuse. I think there's truth to it, but teams have won here. It's not it shouldn't be an impediment. And I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing I've been saying with the front office, like looking outside the organization, you have to be able to be as critical as possible. I don't mean critical just as a negative, like critically evolve your own, or critically, what's the word I'm looking for? Not evolve. Critically evaluate your own roster and your own organization. I'd like to think they have the pulse of who they think can and can't handle things. And I'm sure we all have a couple thoughts on if there's anybody on the team, who those might be. So I agree with everything you guys said earlier. You don't want to hear it, but if you understand why he's saying it, let that be enough. And I don't know, hope and trust that the front office is actually figuring out if that's really the case. I think that goes to what Justin was saying about how you figure out, like you were talking about specific on-field stuff. That's a part of the evaluation too. Who do we have? What are they good at and what are they not good at? So like you said, it doesn't have to be the 50 homer guys on the free agent market. Maybe it's a guy whose personality fits that. Like, I don't know if they knew that or this analysis went into it. I didn't know it at the time. Harrison Bader sure seems like a guy who would have a blast here, right?
Yeah. So
whether they knew that or identified that or that was part of it, maybe he was just the best guy in that class of player available that they could get without giving up too much, right? And it just worked out. But if they're out there looking for that stuff and doing their homework and background and talking to people, I hope they're doing the same thing. And so again, yeah, I agree with what you guys, how you broke it down, that he's saying that for a reason. And if you understand why he's saying that, then get past that. And yeah, it's not an excuse.
John, I know we probably have you until right now, right? Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So one thing that people were critical on social media, and Justin, I'm going to let John answer this first, but I do want to bring it back to you after he drops off. Nick Castellanos mentioned about the fan base, and obviously everybody in Philadelphia talks about how good the fan base is. Citizens Bank Park used to be nicknamed 4 hours of hell by other coaches, and it just doesn't feel the same. And I don't know if that's people getting priced out, if it's just the fan base getting older, people getting tired of falling one step shorter each year. But you and I went to a lot of those games during the 2007 through 2011 stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the team was a little more exciting at times then, the offense at least. Nick Castellanos talked about how sometimes it can be a detriment. It can be wind in their face when the fans turn against them. Do you remember it being more raucous back then, more exciting from beginning to end, even in games where they were losing? Or is it kind of the same thing and we're just prisoner of the moment and everybody wants to be critical of Nick Castellanos anytime he says anything?
You know, that's a good question. It certainly was like fresher. There was a lot more, although I guess by the time, 11 to 22, it wasn't quite as long, but that was still over a decade. But it felt more pent up back then. And everybody ready to, and it just felt more fun. Like we went to the first game in 2007, the first playoff game in 14 years. They ended up getting swept in that series, and I don't remember people booing. Like it stunk, but everybody was just so damn excited to be there that it was just a party. And I think when you win the World Series the next year, you went to a bunch of them. I mean, they won a lot of those games, and
yeah,
I think that helps. But it kind of goes to what I was saying before. It does feel like people are just people are ready to go to the other side. And I thought it on the TV the other day. Not saying it was right or wrong, but I noticed that it felt early that we sit out a week because we have the bye. You get the Dodgers coming in, Ohtani's on the mound. The place is ready to explode. And of course, I think there has to be a balance between, maybe you didn't give them much to cheer about versus you don't just sit on your hands. Like a good crowd doesn't sit on their hands and wait for their team to be winning to do it. And the first time in that game, there was some grumbling. It actually stood out to me. Like if you're going to be this crowd that's an advantage to your team, then you don't get to do the boo bird stuff and the like getting pissed at everything that doesn't go your way. It's a weird thing to police, right? You can't. It's a collective thing. It's an energy. There's certainly like that mob mentality when you're there. It can take over the stadium pretty quick. But I don't know. It was just because it was so fresh and so like it was just such a relief back then. I think towards the end of these runs, it feels more like, hey, we were expecting something we're not getting. And maybe it's even more so now because there isn't a title in this spurt. There was one in the last one. So I hope it's that. But yeah, I hope that people, I don't know. I'm not really a booer. I don't go to games to boo.
Yeah, me neither.
You can be bummed out about stuff and not like the result. But it was weird that it stood out to me on TV that like, well, this doesn't feel like a crowd that's ready to do like to be here for the right stuff. I mean, they were ready to explode, obviously, and cheered every time something good. But like, it feels like the reputation is this is an awesome, really difficult place to play. But I don't know. I would hope that people can. Maybe it's the crowd, maybe it's the prices. You might be right with some of that, but I would guess it's just some of that. Like, there's this expectation, and people feel like it hasn't been met.
Understood. Well, Johnny, before Justin answers, we just wanted to thank you. Appreciate the time. Appreciate you listening beforehand too, bringing in some of the insight that you heard from us earlier. So appreciate that. Appreciate the time, and I'm sure we'll have you soon back on the show for one of these off-season retrospectives. Johnny Fisher joining us. Appreciate you, man. Johnny Fisher joining us, sports researcher extraordinaire. Love having him on the show, and who doesn't like to do a little podcast with their brother? Something about the Kelsey brothers in there for sure. But Justin, I'm going to toss it to you, man. This team has been through uh, the ringer, but the 4 hours of hell doesn't seem to be real anymore. And I can get on a whole rant about how Philly isn't a great wrestling crowd anymore. But are they a great baseball crowd still? Is it the prices? Is it the fandom? Is it the what Johnny said where there's no title yet? What kind of is your vibe watching these games
Yeah,
on TV and how the crowd's acting?
I think it's the expectations, and the expectation of the championship. I do think Philly is a great crowd. I do think that Philly does present a unique home field advantage, just because of the type of fans Philly fans seem to be. I'm a Philly fan too, so I'll group myself in it. Now, do I go and boo? No, but I have booed really bad at bats. I have, but I'm not a super booer. But I feel like also a part of it is having such a long gap without playoffs, going to the surprise run in 22, and then just like jumping automatic to like championship contender. There was no like there was like to me there wasn't a like slow climb where it was like, okay, we're a wild card team. All right, we made the wild card. Okay, next year we made it. It was like the opposite. And I
Yeah.
think that expectation of World Series and then the NLCS loss, I think that just created tension. Now, what the players do have to understand is that the team is always going to be on their side no matter what. But sometimes the booing is ridiculous, but also the town can be behind you. You have to give them something to cheer for. And we've already seen them literally cheer on Trey Turner when he had the worst stretch of his career and literally helped just provide some confidence in him that, all right, I've been being booed. I'm ninth in the lineup and hitting, probably for the first time in my life. But this team is trying to cheer me on because it's obviously getting to me. You do have to be a type of athlete to play in Philly. I do believe that you have to have a specific mental makeup. But I do think that, it's still a good crowd. Literally the same exact thing, and I'm sorry to,
No,
compare
no,
this to
no.
the Sixers. The same exact thing happened to the Sixers. The year that they went to the playoffs where Ben was a rookie, they went to the playoffs. They went on 16-game winning streak. They wound up being a third seed in the playoffs. If they don't go on that 16-game win streak, they're more than likely the sixth seed. And it's just like the next step is let's get better for the next year. But no, the next year they jump into try to be champions by trading for Jimmy Butler. And then everything after that is every move is about championship. And it doesn't like necessarily organically grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
No, I feel you.
then expectations are you guys are not playing to the best of your ability, whether it be for whatever reason. Okay, it's a home game. It's game 5. You need to win this game. You come out, you play terrible. You're going to get booed going to a timeout. You have to show effort and change. And I think that's the part of where the Phillies fans are at. Like, you swung yourself out of the NLDS last year. The offense didn't show up. Now the offense didn't really show up this game. Like, it's the same thing.
They got
Like,
no hit at home in the World Series.
right.
They needed to win one of 2 games in 2023 at home. Couldn't win either one of them. Swung their
Exactly.
way out of that one.
So it's like, I think that's the thing. This team is always going to have the most. I feel like the Eagles is number 1, but I feel like the second most support in the city is going to always be around the Phillies. I
It
really
seems
do
that way
believe
at
it.
least, right?
Yeah,
I think if the Sixers go on a run, maybe
right.
it's a little different. But
Right.
that AI 2001 run was insane. But
Yeah. So I just think that, if they run it back and the same thing happens again, they're going to get booed again.
yep.
And guess what? If they change things and they lose 3 out of 4 to the Marlins or the Nationals at home, they're going to get booed. It's
Yeah.
just the expectations. And if you want to be a winner, you want your fans to support a winner. As a player, you have to understand that, like, they want us to win. I want to win. You don't want to get booed, but like you have to understand from their standpoint, like you can't play down the competition. You got to play the best you can as much as you can, and that's all they want. And they're just
For
gonna
sure.
have to deal with it.
And it's funny, there's some guys who seem to get that and some guys who don't. And I will say that I think that the crowd is a little bit different than it used to be, right? And whether that's price, whether it's just that group getting older and not being as insane, and the next generation not being as passionate, and that's probably not even the right word. I'm not trying to diss any current fans, but like Jimmy Rollins, a guy who was constantly criticized in Philadelphia, despite being a borderline Hall of Famer, winning an MVP, multiple Gold Gloves, multiple Silver Sluggers, multiple All-Stars. And when he won the World Series, he even said, like, this place is hard to play if you're soft. He's like, if you're soft, yeah, this is a hard place to play. But the passion that they show, I want that. Bryce Harper said the other day, I boo myself when I strike out. So I understand why they boo me. They spend their hard-earned money. That's also not a criticism of Nick Castellanos. I don't think he was criticizing the fans and saying, you guys got to cheer for us even though we suck. It is a tough ego check to have a player be like, yeah, sometimes it's wind in our face. If you're booing us left and right, despite us going out there and trying our hardest, even if the results aren't showing, like, yeah, we're gonna be a little upset about that, right? It's, to me, I've always said, like, the for Philadelphia fans, if you have an issue with the way that a player or the media portrays Philadelphia sports fans, then stop acting that way, right? Like, everybody says, oh, we're not the worst fans in the world, and then we get Dollar Dog Night canceled because we start throwing hot dogs and tinfoil all over the place. Santa Claus, booing Santa Claus, that happened so many years ago. But then we go do dumb stuff like that. So, like, don't criticize people for criticizing the Philadelphia fan and then act like they think we act, right? Like, don't, oh man, it's a tough pace to play. All they do is boo their players. No, we don't. And then a guy strikes out and we boo them. Like, maybe we could do almost for ourselves what we did for Trey Turner. Hey, let's give him a round of applause the whole freaking game and keep that noise up. To me, it felt like in 2007, and yes, it's a very different layout. We talked about that. I think Johnny made a great point. What you said was a great point. But I think that it's like, act like the 27th player instead of a person who's reacting with every pitch, right? Like, I remember I was there in 2009 when in the World Series, I think it was Johnny Damon took an extra base because the Phillies didn't have their fielding in the proper place.
Yes.
And I remember the entire crowd going like, oh man. And then they just got back up and cheered again. Right. And that moment sticks out to me because in my head, I'm like, that's the Philadelphia fan. That's the fan that knows, like, yes, that sucked. I'm allowed to be upset at that moment.
Right.
And also my job is to be so loud that the other team can't hear themselves.
Right.
I'm supposed to be so loud that place is ringing. Mookie Betts said it himself. When that place was rocking, he's like, my ears were ringing at one point, but they were able to take the crowd out of it. Not that's the difference maker. The difference maker is the players on the field have to perform, right? At the end all be all, it doesn't matter what the fans do. It could be an empty building. The players who get paid to do the job still have to do the job. But I just thought it was an interesting note because that came up this week about, like, has the Philadelphia fan evolved and maybe why? And I think both you and Johnny made some good points about it. Justin, I mean, I don't know what else we can do except do a full roster breakdown, and I think that's probably best reserved for another episode. We're just getting our emotions out today, folks. We're just getting our emotions out today. So, Justin, do you have anything else you want to talk to the people about before we head out? I think we're reaching the end of our emotional reaction here.
No, I just think that do whatever you got to do, mourn, whatever you got to do. But, you know, like Kyle said, there's gonna be some conversations this off season, and I do think it'll just be interesting the direction that the team goes, and trying to lean into some more youth. I think so. It'll be interesting to see, but I don't put anything past Dombrowski because we all know at the end of the day, we want to talk about everybody else. His job, not saying it's on the line, but I mean, he has to perform well to keep his job too. So, you know, I'm sure that's in his mind as well.
I think there's two things for me as you get geared up for the offseason. One is just remember that every single year's team is a different team. The core pieces might be the same, but next year's team, there's going to be players on that team that were not on this team that don't have the history and the feeling that this club does. any new face on the team next year does not care what happened this season. They're there to do a job, and hopefully we allow the new players and the existing players to do a reset. I like the way that the Eagles players talked about winning the championship last year, right? Like, we're not defending shit. Excuse me for the language, but like, we're not defending crap. We won last year, and this year's a new year with a new roster, new players, new callers, everything like that. So whatever happens in the offseason, it is a new team. It is a reset, and I hope the fans come out ready to go. And the one thing that I would say about the Orion Kirkring situation, regardless of whether he should have panicked, should have kept his cool, it's 100% a play he should have made. He knows that. Everybody knows that. JT knows that. The manager knows that. All of his teammates know that. But the one thing that I've always given Philadelphia fans a lot of respect for is the way that they appreciate honesty, is the way that they will put their arms around a guy who comes out and is open about their feelings. I mean, outside of Joel Embiid with the Joel Embiid sees you piece, they've basically done it for everybody. I don't understand why they won't do it for Embiid, and that's a conversation you and I can have on a Sixers podcast in the future, because I hate the way that they treat Embiid in this city, but that's a story for another day. But typically, the Alec Boehm situation, right? I effing hate this place. I love this place. Cheekily afterwards, you put your arms around him, you love him. You put your arms around Trey Turner, he shows out, you love him, right? Kirkring came out immediately.
Mm-hmm.
The most emotional moment of his entire baseball career. And he faced those cameras and told them it was a dog shit throw, and I shouldn't have done it, and I just panicked. He owned the moment. He's a young kid, and he's going to need your support to get over this, because I can guarantee you that image of JT pointing to first base while he's picking up and panicking to throw to home, it's going to live in our memories a lot more than it's going to live in his memory a lot more than it lives in ours.
Yep.
The entire offseason. And the first mistake next year, you cannot dig in this guy. You have to settle in and know that he's 24 years old, 25 years old next year, and that some of this stuff takes time to grow. And maybe he's not ready to be the closer that everybody expected him to be, but guess what? You have Duran for 2 years. He can learn to be a high leverage guy. He can make adjustments to do better with inherited runners. That's a tough position that he's been put in all season. It was a tough position he was put in last night. And literally, outside of the throw, he did his job as a pitcher.
Yeah.
He generated weak contact. It just happened to be right at him, hit off his foot, and he made a bad decision. So my ask for Phillies fans out there is to wrap your arms around that kid, because he faced the music immediately, and he's going to be facing it in his personal life the entire offseason. Oh, man, it almost feels like a bad time to go, Justin. I see our viewership is peaking right now, but I mean, unless we want to repeat ourselves, I think we've hit all the major points.
We covered everything.
Make sure you give, first off, round of applause. Thanks so much, Justin, for joining us. Really appreciate you hopping on the stream today. I know this isn't your normal lane, but I know you're an avid Phillies fan, and obviously you've covered them well. Gave us some great opinion pieces. If you haven't checked it out yet, go over to phillysportsnetwork.com. Check out his opinion piece today on this devastating loss and the end of the Phillies 2025 campaign. And make sure you keep it locked in, because Sixers are around the corner. He gave us plenty of stuff so far for the Sixers in the preseason. And once the season gets started, obviously follow Justin closely on socials for all your Sixers needs. Justin, we'll have you back whenever you want. So I'll make sure I keep you clued in for whenever the next episode is. I'm telling everybody right now, because I don't want to commit to it next week, because I know I'm going to. If I don't commit to this right now, I'm taking next week off. It's been a very long season. I'm taking next Friday off, and we'll figure out the schedule from there. So stay tuned to @PhiladelphiaSN on X to see when the next scheduled show will be. Keep it locked at Will Work for Sneaks, for Justin, @KyleFisher45 for us. One more time, give it up for the people in the comments. Appreciate the love. Appreciate all the action during the show. Great comments. I love, first off, LA42. This guy joined our stream last week and stuck around all show despite being a Dodger fan. Did it again today, so appreciate you. Cousin Nikki in the comments, appreciate you. I know it was a lot of negativity, but I understand why people are feeling that way today. So appreciate everybody checking out Alley Talk all season long. We'll let you know what the off-season schedule looks like soon. For Justin Crosby, I am Kyle Fisher. Appreciate everybody, and this was Alley Talk on Philly Sports Network.